What's up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast. I am Matt Parrino, and it is Chiefs week, and it is the AFC Championship game, a rematch from all those years ago. Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen, number 4. And we're going to take our first look at the Chiefs with a guy that I think covers the Chiefs and knows the Chiefs more than anybody in the country. Matt Verderame, Sports Illustrated, my guy. Dude, we are T-minus about, what do we got here? 36-ish days since we're getting after it in Indianapolis. It's going to be a good time, but we got some football games here over the next couple of weeks before then. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I am looking forward to this. This should be quite a football game. So I'm excited for Championship Sunday. Look, it's the last game of the day, so you're gonna know, whoever wins, you're gonna know who they get in the NFC before the game even kicks. It's exciting.
What else is exciting is if you are hosting a big party for this weekend's game, head over to Tops Friendly Markets and let them do the cooking. You'll be the real MVP. Visit shop.topsmarkets.com. Elevate your food game with a great selection of custom cakes, desserts, pizzas, sandwiches, fresh fruit, cheese trays, fried chicken, and so much more. Score great deals in time for kickoff at shop.topsmarkets.com. All right, where I want to start with this thing. It's crazy that you look at these two teams in the divisional round. The Baltimore Ravens outgained the Bills by double. The Houston Texans outgained the Chiefs almost by double. And you kind of come away from that game thinking, oh, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen didn't play that great and this and that. But it's these two teams that have perfected the art of mistake-free football. And that's what I think. I don't think this version of the Bills team was even at this level last year in the divisional round when they played each other, and it was, a similar kind of game. What are your expectations of like how this game plays out, 30,000-foot view perspective?
Well, and to your point, you're right, by the way. Like the reason those two teams won this weekend was because they didn't make mistakes, and the other teams that they played made a ton of them. But for this game, a few things. So every time these two teams play, these games are really close. I would be shocked if this doesn't come down to the last 5 minutes. It's just going to. They're both fantastic teams. Like it's going to be nip and tuck. Whenever they get together, it's always tight. Secondly, because of that, I think you'll look at the margins in this game. Who's better in the red zone? Who's better on third down? Who takes fewer penalties? Who wins the turnover battle, which is something Buffalo's been awesome at this year. Their ratio is better than anybody by a mile. I think that's going to be the decider of this game. I mean, sure, look, we get into the minutia and talk about different little parts of strategy and maybe what one team would like to take away and things like that. But in the end, you're going to get a certain amount of situational football in this game that's going to decide who wins. Can you, if you've got third and goal from the 5, do you get a touchdown? You get 3 points. Mm-hmm. If it's 3rd and 7 at midfield, can you convert it and get points on that drive? Or does the other team's defense get a stop and force a punt? Like in games that are this tight, with players that are this great, it's going to be determined by stuff like that.
George Karlaftis led the way with 3 sacks for the Chiefs against the Texans, 8 as a defensive line, about as dominant of a performance as ever. I think that there's a side conversation for the offseason at the malpractice that Nick Caserio has had building his offensive line in Houston. But obviously, we've moved on from that game. What has made this defensive front go? Because, Chris Jones is the guy that everybody always talks about, and rightfully so. They have some really good players on the interior. They have Charles Omenihu back. Wharton on the inside had a pretty good game against the Bills, if I remember correctly, in the regular season game. But this defensive line seems like it's playing its best football at the right time.
Matt, it is. And I think, I'm pulling up a stat right now if I can find it, but, I won't waste our time. Look, the difference has been Charles Omenihu. When he came back, right. Actually, the last game he missed was a Bills game because he was coming off torn ACL. He tore it in the AFC title game in Baltimore, and he was, he's rehabbing throughout. He came back the week after Buffalo, and from when he came back to now, they've been a completely different team up front. They have a lot of versatility because Omenihu will play inside and outside. Jones plays inside and then usually plays outside on third down. But now with Omenihu back, they kind of move him all over. They kind of let Jones pick his spot. Like he had a sack in the divisional round game. We were in the press conference afterwards and asked him about it. And he's like, yeah, I called my shot. I went over the right tackle because I just felt like I could beat him. And, and it beat him clean as a whistle and got the sack. Karlaftis has been excellent. He had a real slow start to the year. But again, since Amena, who's been back, he's been awesome. He's averaging like a sack a game. And they got some rotational guys like a Mike Dana. Wharton, as you mentioned, has 6.5 sacks in the interior. So it's been a much different defensive front. Early in the year, they had to blitz a lot to get pressure. Like if they were getting pressure, a lot of it was like corner blitzes and well-timed the linebacker delay blitzes. They still blitz. Like they still do that. But it's much more now for like they'll pick their spots blitzing than earlier in the year where it was like if we don't blitz, it's going to be a struggle to get home. So Amenahu coming back over the last, let's say, 2 months has really changed everything for him.
You look at the Houston team, which is a pretty up and down running team, but 18 for 88, 4.5 yards a carry. Stroud, who's not really a runner, was able to get some big gains on a couple of plays as well.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter in the end, but this is a better. I mean, you're leveling up probably 3 or 4 levels offensive line with the Bills, what they built here, what they're able to do in the run game. Is that an area like for the Chiefs, who are so good at game planning, Spagnuolo's so good at cooking some things up? How do they match up against the Bills' run game? Because they know that's what the Bills want to be. They know that they want to get their backs going and Allen probably in the run game. How do you feel like they match up and will try to limit that from Buffalo in this game?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge because the Bills' offensive line is one of the best in football, and so the Chiefs are going to have to make some choices in how they want to play. I think this is going to sound contradictory, but I think they go one of two ways in this game. I think they either say we're going to let you run the ball, but we're doing everything imaginable to take away the throw, everything that we're just going to, which is what they did last year in the playoffs, where the Bills ran for I think it was almost 200 yards in that game, but Allen on passes past the line of scrimmage in that game was 10 of 21 for 95 yards. Now, part of that, to be fair to Allen, was Diggs dropped the ball 60 yards downfield. Okay. I mean, I'm not, let's I try to keep it honest. Like you could have made a better throw. But I think the Chiefs kind of felt like in that game, like, look, if we don't give up the explosives, we can win. Now, this is not that offense, right? This is a different offense. My guess is that the Chiefs will come out and play some bigger fronts. They might play some 3 safety looks. They have this kid, Jaden Hicks, who's a rookie, who's played a lot down the stretch. And he's been fantastic. I think he's the best safety in the team. He's been fantastic. They use him in the box. They use him up high. They kind of rove him all over the field. I could see them in this game playing him quite a bit as kind of a guy who's got some speed if Allen runs, but also as a guy who's big enough, is almost like a nickel linebacker or a dime linebacker. I think the Chiefs' biggest focus in this game is Allen's legs. I think they are going to do whatever they can do, which of course is a big task, to try to slow him down. And if Cook and Davis have a little bit here and there, I think they'll live with it. But I think it's those runs by Allen that are so devastating. He's picked up over 50 third downs this year, 50 first downs with his legs. I think Kansas City is going to go into this game saying, listen, we've got to do everything we possibly can to curtail him from taking off, and everything else we feel like there's a matchup here and there we can handle. Look, the Bills are going to get theirs. I mean, they average over 30 points a game. The Chiefs are not going to just shut the Bills down. But I think if they feel like they can confine Allen's running ability, okay, you put McDuffie on Shakir and you take your chances with some of these other battles around the field.
Yeah, that's interesting because I feel like what are they doing on the boundary when McDuffie is in the slot and working against Shakir, who I think makes a lot of sense for him to be there. Yep. You saw last week, I think he lined up against Nico Collins. I mean, the versatility of this player is just unbelievable. But what do they do on the boundary when he works in the slot?
So they'll do a few things. So one guy that came back, that if you're a Bills fan, maybe you're not familiar with this guy, Jalen Watson came back last week. He missed the Bills game last time. He had broken his ankle against the 49ers. He was expected to be out for the year. I had asked people in the building even as soon as like a month and a half ago, like, hey, any chance he's come back? Like, no way. And then shockingly, he was back for the divisional round and played a majority of the snaps. He's been very, very good for them this year. He's kind of the hidden star of the Chiefs defense, kind of, I think, like nationally, like Christian Benford doesn't get the shine he should, but he's a great player. Like it's similar in that regard. Watson will be outside quite a bit. And then The other side, they'll rotate different guys. Yeah, sometimes it's Najee Johnson, who, by the way, if Najee Johnson's on the field, if you're a Bills fan, that's where the ball should be going on every single play, because Johnson has struggled a lot. Sometimes it's Joshua Williams. Joshua Williams is a guy who is much more athletically gifted than Najee Johnson, can have very good games. He also can get handsy at times and take some penalties. So a lot of times when McDuffie's in the slot, the Chiefs will play some zone. They'll try to hide him that way, but they are primarily a man team. And if McDuffie slides inside, I would expect that you'll see a lot of Watson on one side, almost exclusively, and then Williams and Johnson, and even a Christian Roland Wallace, who's a rookie of theirs, kind of rotating snaps, and they'll ride the hot hand as the game goes on.
Great stuff here so far. Matt Verderame, Sports Illustrated. You could read all of his work. Follow him on social media. What's the handle over on Twitter?
My name, Matt Verderame.
Matt Verderame. Boom. As a matter of fact, I could probably bring it up on the screen.
Good luck spelling it.
Sometimes the boom, there we go. We got the screen right there. Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball, because one of the interesting matchups in the Houston game that really jumped out at me was, a month or two ago, the Chiefs went and they pushed Joe Thuney outside to left tackle. Yeah. They had a lot of issues there. He's fixed a lot of problems there, but obviously against Will Anderson, an all-world kind of caliber player, it was a struggle at times. And listen, the Bills mostly have AJ Epinesa at that spot. And I don't think you're overly concerned about that matchup if you're the Chiefs. But what I think the Bills could do is put Rousseau there a little bit more. Now, they really like him setting the edge on that other side. And I think you love his matchup against Taylor too. But I think how the Bills kind of run their edge rushers in this game, especially on obvious pass downs, that can be an area where they get after Mahomes a little bit.
Yeah, so they moved to Thuney. I think the first week of it was week. It was the last 3 games of the regular season, not including week 18 when nobody played. It was the last 3 matchups. And Thuney actually in the first game against Houston did a very nice job. He shut out Pittsburgh, and he actually didn't allow a sack to Myles Garrett. So he played really well. Last game against Houston was their biggest struggle. They struggled more in the first half than the second half. The second half, they made some corrections. They were much better. But you're right. Will Anderson, look, he was a menace the entire game. Taylor's a very interesting guy. He is a penalty machine. Yeah, I guarantee you he takes 1 to 2 penalties in this game. And it'll be pre-snap. Every Chiefs fan will tell you it drives them out of their minds. But, he doesn't get beat a lot. He's a weird guy in that sense. The Pittsburgh game is a perfect example. I think he took 2 penalties in that game, but had 31 snaps against TJ Watt and did not give up the pressure. He will actually hold up halfway decently, but it's the penalties with him. Now, that being said, Rousseau is a good player. Von Miller is obviously not who he once was, but is still a playoff performer that you've got to respect. I think if you're the Bills in this game, and look, this would be, I guess, a better question for you, but do they blitz in this game? They blitzed a lot against Baltimore, more than they typically do. They're not a heavy blitz team. They blitzed a lot against the Ravens. Now, maybe without Zay Flowers in that game, they were like, look, we're willing to take our chances and bring some heat, and we can hold up on the back end against Kansas City. Do they do the same thing? I don't know. To me, though, the question in this game, so I went back and looked before we did this interview. The Chiefs and the Bills have played each other in the playoffs 3 times in this era. The Bills have 3 sacks for 8 yards lost in those 3 games. They have got to get to Mahomes in this football game. If they do not get to him, they're not going to win this game. They have to get to him. And I think that starts with Ed Oliver, to me. You've got to get pressure inside against Mahomes. Because that outside pressure, a lot of times he'll move up, he moves out of the pocket, and a lot like Allen, that's when he's almost most dangerous, is when he's out of the pocket. And then it's like the play breaks down, and he's wailing some ball 30 yards down the field. The Bills, the interior pressure led by Oliver, it's tough against Humphrey and Trey Smith. But, you got to win some of these matchups. That, to me, is the biggest matchup in this game. And Mike Caliendo inside at left guard replacing Thuney has been good, but he's not Thuney, Smith, or Humphrey. I think a lot of people thought Danico Autry might win that matchup last week. He didn't. The Bills have to be able to pressure Mahomes from the middle of the pocket in this game.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up, because when the playoffs were starting a couple days before the wild card round, I put out a tweet to Bills fans, and I asked, who is the player that you're first referencing if the Bills make a Super Bowl run after Josh Allen as the reason why they did it? And my pick was Ed Oliver. He is the only guy on this team other than Josh Allen that was a top 10 pick by this Bills regime. That was back when they still were picking in the top 10. They gave him a second contract. He had a breakout campaign last year with 9.5 sacks. It hasn't been great throughout most of the regular season. He had the one really explosive game against Detroit. But I think a lot of times this defensive line has peaked in the regular season. And it's almost like they've been saving their effort. I mean, they played really well against Baltimore last week, against a team that is really a hard team to scheme against. Did you see this metric or the graphic that NFL on Prime Video put out this week, that the last 10 times the Bills and Chiefs have played, 5-5, 251 to 251 points. It is about as even a matchup as ever. But at the same time, to your point, the ones that matter, the Chiefs have won all of them.
Yeah, they have, but again, you know what? I look at it's a razor's edge. Look, the first time they played in the playoffs, the Chiefs were just a more experienced team, and they won somewhat going away in that AFC title game. That's not going to happen again in this game. The 13 seconds game, while it's painful for Bills fans, is one of the greatest games of all time. I mean, it's just one of those deals. Well, look, if the Bills played a little differently at the end of the game, maybe they win. They probably do win. And then last year, look, it was a great game. I mean, Bass misses the kick, and look, I think if he gets it, there's a good case to be made. The Chiefs probably go down anyway, the way those offenses were playing that night. But it was very tight. And again, Parrino, I think it's going to be the same thing this year. I just think you look at these two teams, and I think both teams are kind of nationally misunderstood a little bit. Like, the quarterbacks are always going to get top billing. They're the two best quarterbacks in football. You're always going to have those two guys. But to me, a lot of this game is going to be, again, not just the margins, but the Chiefs are really good defensively. The Bills are really well-rounded offensively. I mean, a lot of this is going to be when those two units are on the field, who wins certain matchups, McDuffie and Shakir. If you want to talk about Chris Jones on pick your offensive lineman. I saw you tweet out Spencer Brown, right? Like, is it him on third down, him on Spencer Brown, or if they flex him over Deion Dawkins, like a big-time matchup. I think those are the things in this game. Whoever the Chiefs decide to kind of spy Josh Allen, if you will, and I don't think they'll waste too much time doing that in the sense that Allen's going to outrun any linebacker on the field anyway. But it's going to be that stuff. It's going to be those matchups. Ed Oliver on the other side against Creed Humphrey or Trey Smith, or is it maybe Christian Benford, assuming he clears protocol, against the Xavier Worthy or a Hollywood Brown, or how do they deal with Kelsey? I don't think Kelsey could outrun a parked bus at this point, but is just constantly open in every big game he's ever in. Like, I was in the press box at Arrowhead on Saturday. I'm not kidding. There were times he'd come off the line, like literally jogging, like just jogging off the line of scrimmage, and would put like some like move that you'd see in a basketball game in the Y on some guy, and then just wide open for 12 years. Like, how do the Bills do it? Do they bracket him? Do they play him one-on-one? All those things, those are the matchups that are going to determine this football game.
He had 2 catches in the regular season game against the Bills. Yep. But again, those are 2 different Travis Kelce's, because it was the same story the previous season. When he gets to playoff football, it's like he comes alive in a way that, his superpowers are unlocked. I mean, he looked like really Travis Kelce last week, and it's the secondary plays too, like secondary part of the play. He catches that big ball and then breaks a tackle and turns it into 30 more yards. Those are the things that they can't do. Now, the good thing for the Bills defense is that, the Matt Milano stuff was weird yesterday. Sean McDermott was asked about it. We talked about it before the show. He didn't play the last 3 snaps on defense. Sean McDermott said that there was no details given to him about an injury from the medical team, but he hadn't talked to them yesterday. So we'll see tomorrow if he's on the injury report, if he's not practicing, whatever. Right. But if he's available and good to go, and we don't have anything else to lead us in any other direction, that's a huge piece, because they can use him in multiple ways. I think he is somebody you'd want to put on Travis Kelce, or be that kind of spy at times on Mahomes. He did it so well against Lamar last week, even on just some of the plays that don't really get the highlight reel treatment. He had the 2-point conversion where he was used as a blitzer off the edge, adjusted, read Lamar's eyes, came back into the play and batted down a pass. It's those little things for those all-pro veteran kind of players that I think could be like in the margins in this game.
No question. And that's just it. I mean, these teams have been in so many of these games at this point. And it's not, I would be shocked if one of these teams blows the other one out. I would be shocked. It's not who these teams have been against each other for years. I'd be floored if this game is decided by more than 7 points. I think to that point, it is going to be a lot of, look, both quarterbacks are going to make 2 or 3 plays in this game where you're just like, oh my God. Like if you're on the other side of it, you're like, what do you do? How do you stop that? Like, what do you do with that? Allen's going to throw some ball in a bucket 25 yards downfield. Mahomes will have a 3rd and 11 where he's like horizontal and completes a pass to a tight end. He'll complete the Noah Gray for 15 yards. Like that's almost baked into the game. Those guys are going to do that stuff. But the bigger, again, I started the interview out with it. Like I think it's so much about 3rd down. Both defenses have struggled this year on 3rd down. Which one's better in this game? In the red zone, the Bills are very good offensively. Defensively, it's been more of a struggle. The Chiefs have been very good defensively in the red zone, but offensively, it's been more of a struggle. So it's like, which battle wins there? And then the one thing we haven't talked about at all are special teams. That is something in this game. I feel like you don't talk about it till you talk about it. It's like nobody talks about the kicker until he's Kaimi Fairbairn and he's missing kicks left and right. And you're like, well, that matters. The Chiefs have been very good on teams this year. However, they have given up a couple of big kick returns. Is that a factor in this game? The Bills this year, Bass started out really shaky. He's been much better as the year has gone on. But, is there a huge play by one of these teams in special teams where you look back, that was the difference? I mean, I thought in the Houston game for Kansas City, Houston had a 10.5-minute drive to start the second half. It was unbelievable. It's one of the best drives I've ever seen. They scored. It's 13-12, and then Fairbairn missed the extra point. And it's a hard thing to explain, but I mean, Matt, you're in the stadium all the time. You just feel certain. Like when he missed that, I turned to the guy next to me. Like, this game's over. Like you could tell. You're like, you could see the emotion on Houston's sideline. Like, oh my God, you missed it. And then the Chiefs went right down the field, 91 yards, scored a touchdown, didn't miss their extra point. You're like, this game's done. Like those kinds of things in a game. Like if one of these kickers would have missed a chip shot or one of them hits a 54-yarder before half, like that kind of stuff means more in these games.
We got a good mutual friend, Nate Geary, WGR 550,
and he put out immediately after the Bills game.
Yeah, and he put out a tweet. I think it was either this morning or yesterday, and I think it really sums up who the Bills are and why I think they're positioned in a way that no other team really is, because they've had all of these marquee playoff matchups against the Chiefs, in that they've been on the losing end of a tight game. They did everything they could to win in the 13-second game. It's almost like they've experienced failure against this team in so many ways. It's almost like they're not scared of the failure anymore. And Nate put it out there a little bit. It's the way that they've played this year and the brand of play. If there was ever a time where you're going to go on the road and beat this Kansas City Chiefs team that has been unbeatable in the most eye-gouging way for like opposing fan bases across this season, this to me is the makeup for it. But you still got to do it. And to your point, the little mistakes, the special teams coordinator here has been criticized heavily over the last month. I mean, a fake punt conversion for the Broncos, right. A block punt about a month and a half ago against the Rams. There's been a bunch of little like operational stuff that hasn't gone well. If any of those things happen on the road in Arrowhead, to your point, it's almost like pack it up.
Yep. And you know what? I will say this about the Bills. I think the Bills are the only team, and I felt like this going into the playoffs. They're the only team that has a shot at beating this team. For me, and maybe I'll eat words on this, this is the Super Bowl, this game. Whichever one of these teams wins this game is going to absolutely annihilate whoever the hell comes out of the NFC. I believe that. I think Detroit was the one team, if the Chiefs had played them, it would have been interesting just because the offense can score so many points. Like maybe he's getting one of those weird, like, kind of like the Rams-Bills game. Like one of those weird games where it's just like everybody's going to score 40 and you don't know what's going to happen. But I think with the Chiefs, if they had played Baltimore, I would have sat here and been like, the Chiefs are going to win that game. They just own them. They beat them every time they play them. The Bills, in a weird way, it's kind of like, now they play differently and the Chiefs are more of a defensive-minded team. But like it's almost like looking in the mirror with the quarterbacks, and there's so much experience. I think the thing in this game is going to be, Buffalo last time they played, I give McDermott a lot of credit. They had the 4th and 2. They were up 2 points. And I think Sean McDermott a lot of times would have kicked that field goal.
Mm-hmm.
And from a Chiefs perspective, you're watching that game going, if he kicks this field goal, they're going to lose because Mahomes is not going to lose this game. Like, he's going down the field. The Bills, I think, in this game need to be in a similar spot where the Chiefs don't have the ball late with a chance to win, because that is, and that's no shame on Buffalo. It's just the Chiefs have been in this spot so many times where they just, like, look at the Super Bowl last year. You got one shot, go win it, and they do it. Like, I think anybody who plays the Chiefs in a playoff game, you've got to almost take it out of Mahomes' hands with under 10 minutes to go. You have to be able to just, okay, even if they score, we still have the lead. Because he's been number one in everything this year in terms of analytical stuff in the fourth quarter. He's been insane. That's where I think this game, if the Bills can do what they did in Buffalo and just kind of stay that one step ahead, then it kind of mitigates Mahomes' ability to do much. Whereas if it's a 5-point game with 2 minutes left and he's got the ball, it's the same way the other way. Like, if Allen's got the ball down 5 with 2 minutes left, I don't care how good the Chiefs defense is, you're like, oh God, he's going to walk him down the field, and it's going to come down to like a 4th and goal stand if they win. I think that's going to be a big part of it. Who's the ball last if it's a one-score game?
What I think is going to be a big part of Sunday for everybody watching that game in Buffalo, if you're not in Kansas City, if you go to Tops Friendly Markets, is being a big part of Slider Sunday at Tops. Have it your way with King's Hawaiian. Every Sunday is an opportunity to enjoy delicious sliders made your way, and now you can win big while doing it. Vote for your favorite slider weekly for a chance to win tickets to the big game. Head over to topsmarkets.com/Slider Sunday for more details. Matt Verderame, man, the best in the business. Keep it locked on to him all week long as we lead up to this game. You're headed to the Senior Bowl next week. You're going to be moving all over the place. Dude, thank you so much for taking some time for us.
You got it.